set? Are you ready? Okay, I'm going to call the McHenry County Administrative Services meeting for August 2nd to get to order. Roll call, Gloria.
Here.
Terry.
Here.
Teresa.
Here.
Matt.
Here.
And I'm here. We are missing Eric and Pam, correct? I got the numbers right? Yeah. Pam says she'll be late. Eric said he's going to be here, so we'll see. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes from June 7th?
So moved.
It's June 7th, right? Okay, never mind. It's still August. Motion second. Any changes or corrections? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, public comment. Anybody?
There are none. Public comments?
All right. There's no one here for public comment. Member comments. Go ahead, folks. Terry, go ahead.
July 27th of 2023, the Thomas More Society filed a federal lawsuit against Illinois Attorney General Kwame Raoul, seeking to stop him from enforcing Illinois Senate Bill 1909, a measure drafted by Raoul's office that declares the pro-life speech of the state's life pregnancy health ministries to be a deceptive business practice. Thomas More Society is representing the NIFLA, a National Pregnancy Help Center network, along with several Illinois Pregnancy Center Help Centers and pro-life organizations. Quote, the law is a blatant attempt to chill and silence pro-life speech under the guise of consumer protection, explained Peter Breen, Thomas More Society Executive Vice President and Head of Litigation, and former Illinois State Legislator. Pregnancy Help Ministries provide real options and assistance to women and families in need, but instead of the praise they deserve, pro-abortion politicians are targeting these ministries with $50,000 fines and injunctions solely based on their pro-life viewpoint. The lawsuit has been filed in the United States District Court for Northern District, Illinois, Western Division, and seeks a temporary restraining order and permanent injunction against SB 1909. Quote, the state government has completely overstepped the bounds of any logical and relevant authority by inserting insane partisan politics into their governing bodies and attempting to trample the First Amendment rights of those with whom they disagree, said Thomas Glessner, president of the NIFLA. There is no basis for their blatant attacks on pregnancy centers who provide all of their services for free for women and their families throughout Illinois. I just want to point out that this attack on our God-given constitutional rights of the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, continue by the left, and that we as an administration need to be very mindful of what's going on in McHenry County and protecting the freedom of speech. Thank you.
Any other comments? And for the record, Eric, too. Seeing none, we have no presentations, new business, routine consent agenda. Does anyone want anything removed from the consent agenda? Not seeing anybody asking to do that. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Moved by Gloria, seconded by Terry. Roll calls in order. Eric?
Yes.
Gloria?
Yes.
Terry?
Yes.
Teresa?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. Consent agenda is approved. Any old business? If not, budget reviews, human resources, come on up.
Here she is.
She wanted to go first.
So I'm not really sure exactly what you want to hear this year. I know that we're supposed to bring it down, so I didn't create a PowerPoint presentation. I don't have a long, detailed list of goals and objectives. Although we accomplished a lot this year, I'm really proud. I'm not going to waste your time on that. So I understand that you have these numbers and that we're supposed to focus on those. I am requesting a supplemental, I have a supplemental request because we're due for a compensation study again. We did one 2 years ago. I'm estimating it's going to cost about $30,000, so that's my supplemental request is the $30,000. Otherwise, everything is pretty much the same. I am paying an extra $1,000 for ink, which somebody else has obviously been paying for me since I got here because I've never paid for it, and now somebody told me I'm supposed to be paying for my own ink. So there was an extra $1,000 in there for ink. Other than that, in the HR side of the office, that's pretty much it. It's pretty simple. I don't know, what would you like to know? What do you want, yes?
Go ahead.
So, I probably should know this already, but, so, in your, Department 8, most of the budget is for contractual services, that's a heavy.
Okay, Department 8 is the next one.
Oh,
Yeah.
haven't that one yet?
So we can go there.
Oh,
We can go there. So the Department 8 is the Employee Benefit Fund.
yeah.
And that's where all of our medical plans come from.
That's the contract services, this is the medical plan?
Yes, that's the
Okay.
health and all the health insurance, the EAPs, all of those contracts that we have with all of our benefit providers. The people, WEX, who manages our HSA and FSA plans. Yeah, it's all
So
service providers.
I guess, I obviously was wrong about this, I assumed that, like, all the benefits would also fall through, like, each department's personnel service costs, but they don't.
Some of it gets pulled back.
So this is an internal services fund.
Okay?
So they actually pay IPVC directly for our premiums. And then if you notice on Department 8, the revenue is also very large.
Yep.
Because then the other funds reimburse this fund for that. So the special funds, you'll see the benefits rolled up into the personnel, but the general fund actually has a separate department. So when a general fund is presenting, you won't see their FICA, IMRF, and health insurance in those numbers.
Okay.
And when we bring it to finance, you'll see it in non-departmental. It's a large number. But then the special funds have it going through theirs. But all the general and special funds reimburse it, and that's what that operating transfer is. That's why typically we don't include operating transfers in when we're considering revenue, because it's kind of double counting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Human resources before technically go to risk management.
Yes, I have a question. I just wonder if recruitment is better, because I've been seeing some really cool ads and
Yes.
everything, and
I
I
will
wonder
do,
if it's...
I have a report later, and I'm gonna talk about, our vacancy, and we'll talk about, but, yes, we've been reaching out in some different sources in recruitment. Methods, yeah.
Thanks.
Let's do, we're okay to be done with HR on budget review. There wasn't a lot of change here, so, okay. Risk management.
There was a bigger change. You started a new employee July 1, but that's already baked in the cake now.
Yes, it's baked in the cake. And it's been sweet. So I want to say thank you. Our new person started, she's been here for 2 weeks and this is 3 days, so this is day 13. And it's been a great help. We've already started to move into creating the mentorship program. She's already working on our SharePoint and our web, so she's been doing a lot already, so thank you.
Risk management. We'll get to me, Carrie, just stay right there.
Well, I don't want to, take away from this.
There's a slight possibility you might be needed in the next two.
All right, good morning for the record. My name is Scott Harden. I'm Deputy County Administrator, and part of my key responsibilities for the county is to handle and oversee the county's risk management function. I am pleased to present to you our fiscal year 2024 budget. Under the understanding of keeping it brief, I will do my best, but those who know me know that sometimes that's a tough ask. Just on a very high level, you have the budget, the brief budget in the packet. Overall, the tort fund, risk management fund, has about $134,625 increase in a non-personnel related line item. The $181,500 increase was in insurance. So we tried to jot down other line items in order to help offset our anticipated 8% insurance costs. So you see that number's going up. And this year was very difficult because in all the prior years I was proud to present a maintenance budget, balanced budget, but the insurance costs over the years have grown so much where we had to do supplementals, and this is just realistic. Insurance costs are going up $181,000 we anticipate. We'll find out actually in October when we do have the full renewals. So this is just based on an estimate and conversation with our broker. So give me some latitude on that number. We're trying to do our best. And that number also does not include a $15,000 reduction in the unemployment insurance, which risk management pays, or excuse me, it's their direct unemployment costs. Those were included in personnel expenses. In years past, I have always said that that's not the right place for it, but nonetheless, it's in personnel, and it has been reduced by $15,000. Risk management provides allocations to the state's attorney's office for personnel. There's 6+ personnel in the state's attorney's office that was funded through risk management to help provide our litigation defense, because as a county we get sued, and they provide great defense for us. In addition, there's training and other expenses for the state's attorney that's built in. The sheriff has a significant amount of money from risk management, primarily to cover their body armor and other safety-related needs through risk management. The coroner has an allocation to cover the medical waste disposal, because that's a safety-related item. And IT has a chief information security officer, 50% of which is paid for through risk management. And as you heard me say, cybersecurity, cyber liability is one of our biggest threats facing the county. So that's why it's appropriate to have our CISO funded in part by the Ford Fund. Key changes that this year, there's been a slight increase to the sheriff's safety allocation by $2,000, just because costs have been going up and we're trying to meet that. There's a shift in money from the legal defense, which if we were using outside attorneys we would pay, but since we do a lot of in-house defense, we shifted dollars from there to cover more in-house workers' compensation expenses, because we do a lot of our workers' compensation claims in-house. So we're just moving money. This budget, though, what's really remarkable is 50% of the deputy county administrator position, which is my position, has been pulled out of the FY24 budget and moved in part 25% to the general fund, 25% to the economic development fund. And the purpose of that is twofold. Number one, it's more reflective of what my position does to the organization. Deputy county administrator spends a lot of time in general fund responsibilities and on economic development. So it's only fair that that salary be attributable to those functions. Secondly, it helps relieve the pressure on the tort fund. Now, at the very end of the presentation, I hope to entertain you with the model, and you'll see, though, exactly how that folds in and the effect of that.
When Scott joined the organization in 2014, the deputy county administrator that he replaced was nearly exclusively focused on risk. And in working with the county board at that time, I was able to kind of create a much more generalist position that Scott's holding now. And, the deputy county administrator today helps me in a variety of general functions, supervising emergency management, supervising facilities management, supervising workforce, supervising purchasing and procurement and support services. So to that end, it's always kind of bugged me that we were charging all that to risk. I finally said, let's do it this year. We need to relieve pressure on the tort fund anyway, so let's be more reflective of what's really happening.
Yep. So that's what you're going to see fiscal year 24. This year, so the tort fund's primarily funding mechanism is through property taxes. In years past, the fund balance in the tort fund was quite high, and when the county took the step to reduce the property tax burden and reduce the property tax levy, the tort fund was one of the mechanisms by which the county was able to achieve that, because you did not need to levy money for the tort fund because the fund balance was so high. We've since, for the past few years, have reached a point where that's no longer sustainable, and a tax levy is necessary to support the insurance fund purposes. This year's tax levy is built in at $3.5 million. For perspective, last year was $2.75 million, so it's an increase of $750,000, and that's needed to shore up the tort fund. And this is really where the model comes into play. And I have it on the screen, and I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it. I'm happy to spend your individual time, because there's a lot that this model does. I'm pretty proud of it, because it really serves an important need. The primary question was to answer to the county board and to our CFO and to our county administrator, how much tax levy does the tort fund need? So when we say $3.5 billion, that's just not a number pulled out of the sky. It is really based on all the variables that go in, the assumptions, the trends, the known expenses, what we can anticipate, just to say, how do we keep the tort fund happy, or how do we keep it healthy? In the event that the county has a settlement, this is where those settlement dollars come from. So you need to ensure that you have the ability to cover those losses or those costs if they come due. So if you just indulge me, let me just run through really quickly, and I won't spend a lot of time unless you want to, what the model does and how it functions, and what's an important tool really in this consideration. I call it the multivariable tort fund reserve analysis tool. As we read from Valley High Committee yesterday, I like big names for models. Maybe I'll get over that, I don't know, but it's reflective of what it is. Real quick, this orange represents the fund balance. And as you can see, 2019, we had almost $7.8 million just in fund balance. So that's how the county was able to reduce its property tax levy and use the tort fund to sustain itself.
One of the reasons.
One of the reasons. It's a reason. It's high.
A significant reason.
Yeah. But when 2021 reached a point where that was no longer doable, and there had to be a tax levy to then shore it up. So 2022, moving forward, a tax levy was put in place. So that's your fund balance. All right. This green line right here represents your losses. Now, that's hard to predict because every year, we don't know what exactly the losses are going to be. We don't know what lawsuits are going to come in or what claims are going to be filed. But this model builds in a lot of just different tools and trends and analyses, and I come up with what I call a loss predictor package. And that allows me then to predict moving forward what those losses will be, because they're a key component. I mean, that could be $1.5 million a year, depending on where we're at, and that's on a typical year. The blue bars represent your non-loss operating expenses, so you can see how they go up. This brownish bar, that represents a tax levy. This green represents a combination of loss and non-loss expenditures to the tort fund. And then this gray line represents what's called the central estimate. And if you want to target where the fund balance should be, it should be at least to that line. That is an actuarial study of 50% of the losses, a 50% confidence level of all of our losses. Basically say, if we had to pay everything out, 50% surety that that's what it would cost. That would be a target. We're not, we can work on a strategy to get there, but that's put there for reference. This line, this dotted gray line at the very top is the statutory limit of what the tort fund can be, the tort fund balance can be. So we're capped by state statute. So this model puts all that into play, and it gives you the opportunity to put in certain assumptions and variables, certain known conditions that come in. I reference a loss package based on statistical analysis and what I've known and what I can predict based on the claims that are already before us, based on what we anticipate, based on loss trends, on risk tolerances. We developed this loss package. And then the key figure is your tax levy. As I mentioned, you can see what the effect would be. If you wanted to stay at a 2.75 tax levy again this year, you can see how the tort fund, the reserve is healthy. So the intent is, and I appreciate Carrie and Pete for recognizing the need that we need to build it up, to shore it up a little bit. And this is the tool in which they can make a decision and make a recommendation to you, a sound recommendation to you. Ideally, if you want to do something higher, we can show what that looks like, but you also need to balance this request for the tax levy among all the other requests. And I recognize that, I appreciate that, but this just gives you insight to what we need and why. As I indicated, this year is a key change of 50% of the DCA salary into other funds. If you don't do that, you can see how that increased the expenditures and decreased the losses. But by doing so, what that does, the pressure we're relieving off of the tort fund over the next, let's say the next 4 years, is $386,000. Now, the Economic Development Fund has money coming in. Interest has been very good. So there's actually dollars coming in that will help offset those costs for fiscal year '24. General fund, obviously, that's something you have to balance with other general fund requests. But with that, that's the model, that's the risk management budget, that's the presentation.
You referenced economic development funds, you're proposing to charge some of your salary there.
25%, yes. Because between Pete and I, we worked together with MCEDC on the economic development function.
We're just looking at our tools, we got money in economic development, let's take some pressure off the general fund.
So with that, I would welcome any questions, or if you want me to go goals, highlights, budget indicators, happy to do so.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
If you could just move that down a little bit so we can see the top of that. Yes, so up there when the fund balance was 7.79, that figure, and then it was reduced to where we see the dotted line going across. Now, you said the dotted line is the max that you can have in the tort fund balance.
So that's.
So my question is, we were way up there, you know, like almost $8 million. So did that change occur in the state?
No, and a very astute observation, we were overfunded in the tort fund back then.
Okay.
So that's why it's very mindful, we can build this up, but by statute, we can only have so much money in there, and if you tax one more dollar over that, then you run the risk of a tax objection lawsuit.
Okay, so my question was, we were at this high balance, like almost double what the max was, for how long?
Actually, and then in years prior to that, it was higher. In fact, 1 year, I think the high water mark was about $15 million. The thought process was because if the county gets faced with a really large lawsuit,
Yeah, I understand.
that could cripple an organization. Insurance only covers so much, and the intent was to make sure the county was well protected. Well intended, but I don't, you know,
You're always trying to find a balance. This has been historically a very conservative county, right?
Right.
Very financially conservative. We got overly conservative.
Okay.
And we balanced that against some real pressures in 2017, 2018 to reduce the levy, right?
Okay.
So this is
So we could have gotten in
kind
trouble
of shifting that, right?
yeah.
having it overfunded, but we did not.
So it was actually a great opportunity because we needed to draw down that fund balance, and it helped the county to achieve its objective.
Okay, I was just trying to understand why we were able to go at 8 million when you said that we really should not be above that.
Yeah.
The danger is that if a taxpayer were to file suit objecting to the levy,
Mhm.
they would actually win that portion of the suit.
Okay,
And, I mean, nobody did, but it would be a defense to paying the tax bill.
wow, missed an opportunity. huh?
Yeah, we all missed it, yeah.
Thank you,
Sure,
thank
go
you,
ahead.
Scott.
So did we do a transfer out then of almost $4 million then somewhere else? So what happened to
We
that?
burned it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the tort fund is operating with zero fund balance, or a zero tax levy,
Yeah.
and then the operating costs, insurance costs just fed off that fund balance to draw down.
Our levy in 2016, 17 was 79 million. We brought it to 69 million. It's hovered at about 69 to 70 million now
Right.
for 70. I think it was 71 last year. So we just used it.
So that loss was just not having a tax levy to it. I know. Now you've set it up. Now I can't see the tax levy was for 20.
So, yeah, so there was no tax levy in fiscal year
21.
20.
That was
in a
not.
sense, we gave it back to the taxpayers by reducing the levy,
That's right.
and it's still today much lower than it was 6 years ago.
That's correct.
What was it 6 years ago?
Sorry?
Do you remember what it was 6 years ago? Okay.
Rough numbers was 79 million, reduced to 69 million, and then it's inched its way back up to 71 million last year.
Other questions about risk management?
Thank you for showing previous years. I really like to see what has happened over time, so I appreciate that.
Wonderful. Happy to do
Go ahead,
and
Eric.
if anybody wants more detail on this model, I'm happy to take
Yeah, as far as the fiscal year 22 to 23 insurance premium increase,
Mhm.
it looks like it's going from down 15% to up 10% this year? What's the, I guess, the explanation?
So these are year-over-year increases, so.
Right.
So at 23, it was 10.2% increase over 22, which was a 15.3% increase. So you see the compounding effect of our insurance premiums. To give you perspective, when I started with the county in 2014, we were about a little over $800,000 for all of our insurance. Last year, we were about $1.5 million. And so, I mean, we're not quite doubled in that short period of time. But that percent that's a year-over-year increase, not not an up and down. So it's 10.2% on last year's 15% increase. So this year, it's based, the 8% is based on discussions with the brokers, market analysis, what the trends are, the county's losses and exposures. So
Biggest areas increase, long-term care and cybersecurity?
So historically, yeah, those were 2 pain points: long-term care, cybersecurity, cyber liability. But last year, the excess insurance market has been through the roof. So the county has, we have a $1 million policy, and then we have actually $15 million of excess on top of that. That excess policy, and there's actually 2 of them just for the general fund, were pretty reasonable, but the industry, the insurance industry felt a lot of pain, and they pass on it to everybody. I'm sure you see your insurance rates go up. County's no different, and in order to ensure we have the coverage that we need, it came at a significant cost. We do what we can. We try to alter it. One of the goals you'll see in 2024 is to do an assessment of the county's risk management program. Right? Our approach right now is we have a self-insured retention of $250,000, which means when a claim comes in, we own the first $250K, and then the insurance will kick in thereafter. Is that an appropriate level? Should we be at that? I mean, should we go to a higher level that will keep our insurance costs down, but then we'll maybe paying more out, or should we go lower, which will increase rates? It's all what's called risk tolerance. So we want to assess our risk tolerance in all the different lines of coverage. We want to do that this year. And are we appropriately placed? We do this every so many years because it's good business, right? Is our program set the way it should be? Similarly, we're going to look at getting into a risk management pool. HR just talked about you had a resolution on the benefits, and the benefits talked about a risk management or a health insurance pool that the county joined several years ago, and there's some benefit to being in a pool. We're not in a pool. We've looked at that over the period of several years, and we're going to look at it again because there may be some benefit this year, and in the past years there was none. So we made the decision not to, but I think it's incumbent upon us. And I think it's your expectation of us that we look at it every so often and say, is our program right for the county? And we want to revisit that this year.
I have a question about the tort claims. Do you look at how many are predatory, and if there's anything that you can do to prevent predatory lawsuits from coming into the county?
What do you mean by predatory?
Generally, what we experience is that predatory claims come in early in employment, and in some cases there is some history that is not legitimately public record, and you only see it after the fact so that you can see that, okay, well, we got hit, but it was predatory. And so then what could we have uncovered in our hiring or onboarding process to determine that? Do you see that in the county?
Actually, no. I don't see that. The employment-related claims are few, and and then not talking workers' compensation. But once again, workers' compensation, we can see a history. Not that that's has any consideration in hiring, but if somebody has a pattern of unsafe practices at work, they're going to have claims from previous years. That's public record. That's something that when a claim comes in, we look at. Unfortunately, the Illinois workers' compensation system is a bit skewed. It's employee friendly, and it doesn't matter if somebody gets hurt. We're in a challenging position to work through that. So.
Eric, go ahead.
I just have one last question. For the tax levy for fiscal year 24, it's $3.5 million, and then it goes down about $0.35 million a year. Is that just from is the increase from fiscal year 23 to fiscal year 24, is that mostly attributable to the increased insurance premiums?
Well, I think that's a key component of driving our costs, and as I mentioned, this year's budget is increased because costs have just gone up, and the tax levy increase from 2.75 to 3.5.
Which is proposed.
Proposed, right. That's
I understand.
It's proposed.
That's-
If we don't do it, we're kicking the proverbial can, because it'll probably have to be higher next year.
Right, and so once again, that's, costs are going up, claims are going up. You know, I'll give you a good example. When I started here in 2014, you know, a bumper of a squad car, you hit something, hit a deer, whatever, costs between $1,000 and $2,000. You know, now that's $2,000 to $5,000. So, and that's you know, and more towards that, you know, $4,000 to $5,000 mark for a variety of different reasons. But that just shows you how just something simple as that, something that happens, you know, on a regular basis. Yeah, so those costs have gone up. So this is reflective of that 3.5 in subsequent years really just shows, based on the model and all the assumptions and everything baked in and massaged through, what it could look like. This, but you can see though, based on everything as it sits today, you know, the fund looks healthy. But let's say in 2025 we have a really bad year, and which is a 4 in the loss package. You see how that happens. Then we get another bad year in 2026. You can see the effect of, you know, say these claims and these lawsuits, these settlements. You may have heard the term nuclear settlement, which is, you know, $20+ million for, you know.
The good thing about nuclear settlements is you see them coming, right? They don't happen overnight. It maybe takes 2 or 3 years to reach that point, and we can adjust things, so usually in time to get there.
Yeah, and Pete, that's really a good point. So how we can have a little bit of confidence with it. The lawsuits we have going today, they're not going to settle tomorrow. They may not settle next year. But, you know, for those attorneys in the room, you kind of know how long a case takes, and, you know its life expectancy, you know its maturity rate, you know it takes time, and you kind of can have an anticipation of what the outcome can be generally, where it's going to settle or how it's going to settle. You make some assumptions or predictions there. But that's not until out years. And what this model does is it takes into account what we know that's in play today, what may settle within the next fiscal year, builds that in, and plus it takes in, you know, with the different tools that we have through the insurance industry, such as, such as reserves and you know, some predictions, talking with our legal defense, and, you know, maybe posturing for different settlements, or we bake as much that we know or can predict into the model. And then there's always if a new claim comes in next year, we may not see that claim fully manifest until fiscal year 27, which allows me then to update the model accordingly to reflect that claim. So that's why it's, you know, it's hard to predict, but Pete's absolutely right. We're also looking way on the horizon, and we're able to see things further on the horizon. And then, like any model, we can adjust as we go and as conditions are known.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I mean, is it worth looking at what happens if the board doesn't want to raise to 3.5, like what that's going to do to the model?
Yeah, what happens if we put 2.72 in for that fiscal '24?
So it was actually 2.75, but whenever I pulled the numbers,
Yeah, I just want to see the number line with 2.75,
you went 2.7 across?
right there. That's
Right
good.
there.
Yeah, that's kind of like cross your fingers.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, there's, you know, it's, I would encourage the county board to not impact the tort fund that much, because there are some lawsuits that are pending.
Mhm.
Those who are new to the board have seen
Mhm.
settlements come through, and you will see more of those, and this is where they're paid from. So the challenge is, if this goes down to zero, the county still needs to pay those settlements, so then you have to come out of other funds, and such as the general fund.
It's not a good plan.
Yeah, it's not an option, or if it's a judgment, or if it's settlement, it's not an
No,
option.
it's like this building, we'll just take the.
So I have one more question, Al. So is a safe place to be at that $3 million mark for the tort fund balance? I see you have a dotted line across there. I know yes. Is that I mean, would
This
That's
is-
getting kind of close to,
If you were to ask me ideally where
Where
the
you would
tort
want
fund
to-
should be,
Mhm.
I would say at the minimum, this line.
Okay.
This is 50%, it's called the central estimate, so 50% confidence level of the actuarial analysis.
Mhm.
There's another one called the 75%.
That makes Scott sleep very well.
Yeah, well, the county and our residents. But,
That's right.
but once again, if there's a settlement or if there's a judgment, it's not a choice as to whether or not you pay. You have to pay,
Right.
so it doesn't come from here. It's coming from somewhere. So what this does is this shelters those dollars that, that'll like exposure of the county. One thing to keep in mind, I'll just say that though, is there are a few tools under the Tort Fund Act, actually, that's not the name, but I'm going to simplify it, that if a big settlement comes in, you can't delay that payment over a period and spread it over a period of number of years. There's a few opportunities you have with the Tort Fund. We have not had to exercise that, but in the event a nuclear settlement comes in, we will present you with some tools to help lessen that year-to-year burden.
Thank you.
And then how is the interest on the fund balance?
It's really not much because the fund balance is low. Right now we're sitting at thinking.
I was wondering if can you stop a fund like this the way you can, say when we were talking with Valley High yesterday about having
Yeah.
it available?
Well, this actually is commingled with the general fund,
Okay.
so audit interest benefits the general fund.
And you probably have to have some liquidity too, right?
Yes. And Carrie and Pete could probably better speak on how that functions in the background.
Mhm.
Any other questions on risk management? County board.
All right. Well, I'm going to stay here. While I'm walking back, over the past few weeks, you were emailed a request to come up with goals and highlights for the county board. So what's included in the packet is what we've received, a few little additions that were suggested. But what I would ask of this committee, since you have oversight of the county board budget, is to let me know, are the goals and highlights where they should be changed, should they be amended? Should we send this back out to the county board as a whole for more ideas?
I'll speak at once.
Well, I read them over the last couple of days, actually last night. I was driving home. They seem like goals. I can appreciate the goals of my colleagues, and I see my own goals put in here, so I appreciate that they're in here. They seem like appropriate goals to me. Did you get a lot of response from the board members?
No, that's the response that we received.
So, we're gonna edit. Well, because sometimes there can be overlapping goals, right?
Yeah, that's, they're word
They're word for word. I didn't know it was mine or word for word. Yeah.
I don't know what to think of you.
Scott did this while I was gone last week, and you did a great job.
Yeah.
Well, but part of it, these are your goals. I don't want to, like I said, we suggested the board goals and a few things that we know. But the county, these are your goals, so you should tell us.
You have a strategic plan.
We do, yeah.
The goals are part of what we need to prepare for GFOA as we pursue the GFOA award. So I wouldn't get too hung up on them, but as long as you feel like they're heading in the right direction, I think if you want to add something, we can add to.
Well, part of it too is you want to say, a certain degree of commitment to it. If you say you're going to do it.
Because next year when we do the highlights, we're going to start with these.
That's right. Hopefully slide them all up. But if you have any further thoughts on, please let me know, and we'll be happy to make those changes. But as far as the budget, I don't, Gary, Pete, I'll let you talk about the numbers. Anything changes? Anything remarkable? This year, of course, there's, like last year, a reduction. Now we have an 18-member county board. It's reduced significantly from previous years. As you can see with the personnel expense, that's shown.
Yeah.
So I think throughout COVID, we saw lots of reduction in how this particular department was used. So I increased it slightly for '24 to have a better reflection of what we're seeing. Like if you look at year-to-date versus even some of the 21 and 22 actuals, you know, this department was just running out of budget when we're trying to pay some of the required travel or membership dues. And I guess just for reference, pre-COVID 2019, the contractuals and commodities was 89,000. So it's still a reduction, it's just a little bit more realistic, I think.
There is one other goal that's not in here that just occurred to me. We reset, we have an obligation to look at salaries for county board chairman and the other countywide electeds that come up on this next election cycle. Because that would not have been done in the last election cycle because those people were all, it's a 4-year cycle for those jobs. And that would usually be something that this committee would see in the springtime.
I thought we built in inflators. I thought.
We may have, but that because of the way, if you're going to change those salaries, and I'm not saying we're changing them, but if you're going to change them, you have to do it so many months before the general election.
I think you're both right. I think the way we designed the compensation resolution, it's fine if we don't touch it, but we
We
can't
have to
revisit
look
it.
at
You're absolutely right.
We'll add that as a goal, happily.
I mean, we may do no changes, we may do changes,
Right.
but we at least need to,
So how about I just say review instead of reset? When we say
that's
review?
fine.
Okay, all right.
I had a conversation recently with the Lake County Administrator, and I know that they're starting to think about that as well.
They're in good shape, salary-wise, for their chair and their board members. So,
other-
before we leave this, I just wanted to say, you know, being a newly elected board member last year, that I really liked the orientation that was presented. I think our members did an excellent job, as well as you, Scott, and you, Peter. I really liked that, and I felt like the time was well spent.
I'm just going to say there's always room for improvement.
Well, and that's why the second goal is.
That's why I said that we review it.
Yeah,
I know.
review.
It was, yes.
Mhm.
And actually on that, with the brand new members sitting here, it's like, so now you're 6-8 months into your role. You know, my question to you would be, what do you know now that you wish you knew then? And that's really what we want to focus in orientation.
That is a great, yep.
And for the, you know, for the successors, they'll be in a better position, because there's a lot to take in.
Maybe next summer we can dig out what we did last time and work with everybody and say, is this, you know, what do we want to improve? What do we want? What can we omit? What can we add?
I just am, right now, going to voice that I think we really need to focus in a lot more conversation on the role of a board member. Legally, what we can do, what we can't do, those kinds of things, to make it abundantly clear what authority we have and where we get that authority, et cetera.
Any other county board goals or changes or corrections or? Okay, in that case, county board chairman.
Okay.
How come he's not here? I want to hear him present.
Yeah, I'll let you feel that.
He's going to be here at 11:30.
This one's even less.
Tell him it comes, but.
Wise man, wise man.
This was straightforward. County Board Chairman actually had significant input and review of the goals and objectives, or sort of the highlights in the goals. So Chair Reveal is well aware of these and helped develop those, and we work together. So that's a lot of his work in there. I think as far as really the number, there's hardly any changes there. There's no change.
Well, put down on his goal that we're gonna review his salary next year.
Maybe he'll show up.
We gotta see Any other, by the way, for the new board members, I can tell you that 6 years ago, 7 years ago, when this started out, this was a big topic. It's not so much now. It has calmed down, but it was not an easy decision those first couple of years. So, anyway. Any other questions about budget reviews?
Consensus to moving forward.
We're gonna move forward. Capital plan update.
Good morning. We'll start down at Carrie.
As you look at me when you say that.
Oh, no. All the foundations are poured for the firing range now. The construction manager feels that the December completion of the shell and most of the interior finishes, et cetera, will hold at December. However, there's still an outlier, which is the mechanical equipment used to change over the air. I brought that up in the past, and that's showing currently an April delivery. So the building itself can be completed, but the firing range ventilation system may not be ready to go in December or January until that equipment comes. I know the mechanical engineer, the architect, and the ventilation contractor are working to try and come up with a solution that might push that forward, but right now, that's where we're at with that. The training facility is scheduled to be complete in late September. That looks like it will work. The interior is coming along nicely. Most of the fire life safety components are being tested now. Flooring will be delivered next week, so it's coming together, and that looks likely to be completed next month. Building envelope phase 6, the glazing contractor is currently working in the courtyard. We're doing some work to the north facing elevation. From there, they're going to move back out of the courtyard over to the east entrance, work above the east entrance, then replace the doors over probably several weekends. We'll have to come in and out of that, and then complete the west main entrance systems. We're looking at September again as a completion target for that project. It's going well. Received bids back yesterday for interior improvements to court services. Those bids came in as anticipated. There was a little bit of a high-low concern. We have a $175,000 bid, and we have two at $240,000, $260,000 bid. So we're in the process of qualifying that bidder to see, to be sure that they had included all of the scope in their work, or in their bid. Jail trailer pre-purchase is going along well. The design documents are almost complete. We expect to have that out for bid in October or November, with December or January approvals. That will put us in time for the delivery of the chiller, which is right now holding at March, which is a great time to do that work. So it'll be March, April. We'll commission the chiller and get it online in time to begin cooling the jail. Valley High Memory Care Wing, we are still working to get a start date. We had heard that August maybe mobilization. Right now there's a back and forth with the geotech on the soil. The soil conditions we know need work. There's some back and forth between the geotech and the structural contractor on their submittals, so we're working through that prior to mobilization. So we don't have a firm mobilization date. We're hoping that in August. I wouldn't personally bet unless it's plumbing part of the farm, I probably wouldn't bet the farm on that August start date. Other projects in queue, we have a quote for the replacement of the Valley High kitchen flooring. It's currently it's a painted on finish. We're going to put a full epoxy, that third-year finish on that, mainly because it's so interruptive to try to do this work. You have to take the kitchen out of commission for a week and a half or so to get this done. We want to put a product down that we don't have to look at it again for, say, 30 years. So we have one quote in, and purchasing is out. Is expecting additional quotes to come in for that work. We'd like to have that work being done first week in November, last week of October, something like that, prior to Thanksgiving would be great. So we're looking at late October or early November as a target to get that work done. EV infrastructure, our consultant, long-term consultants we've met with, we've talked about, we've presented some ideas or collective ideas on where we've been discussing over the last few years with what some siting might be, where the fleet might be best served. They're planning on coming. We have a meeting this afternoon to look at the kind of a pre-draft review of where they're at. Next week we expect a draft of here's what we think, and it's just it's a roadmap. It's not there'll be plenty of time for people to have input, but without this map, people don't have anything to have input with. So this is really a goal to kind of talk about high level, what are costs, what makes sense as far as siting this, as far as where we have available utilities now currently in our buildings, versus how can Commonwealth Edison help us by not coming out of our buildings, but coming off of poles. So that's kind of where we're at today. Likewise with the greenhouse gas emission inventory, we believe we have everything they need, consultants need. We've discussed what that's going to look like. We've kind of looked at the data. We expect to have that draft back to us next week as well. So month of August looks like we'll have those two, at least, depends on how many comments we have to go back on draft with, whether or not they will wrap up quickly. We expect that it will. But in particular, greenhouse gas, that's basically a catalog of where we're at. There's not a lot of subjectivity to it at all. We have good-looking preliminary plans for the rework of the archive storage building, the home materials. Those plans have been reviewed by the health department. We have a plan that would hold everything that they have without expanding the footprint of all of that building. Right now it's being reviewed by the mechanical and fire suppression team, because there will be some modification, because we're going to go vertical with some racking in there. There would be the minor modifications to the mechanical services and perhaps a fire sprinkler system. Once that's complete, we plan on not letting this out as a general contract, but rather say 3 specific packages. One would be create a roadbed and a drive lane up to the new entrance. 2 would be put in a new entrance and overhead door, and 3 would be whatever mechanical work we need to do, lighting and heating. So we wouldn't see a general contract for this. We'd more than likely see 3 separate prime contracts that would take care of that work. Right now, at best, we might be able to get this wrapped up in January, depending really on what the pricing comes back from these bids, whether or not we need to go through county board for approvals. That's not a problem for us to do, it just takes time. So that's where we're at.
Questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. And she's back.
I'm back. I have 3 different things that I want to talk through. One of them I was going to present last time, but we didn't have a quorum. And since then I put it out in email, but I had already made copies to hand out. So I'm going to hand them out because I have them. And that's related to the employee survey. We've been doing this survey now regularly and kind of tracking, we're hoping to see tracking progress each year, and we did. We have seen progress in every single category that we've been looking at countywide. There's one of them where we were a little bit higher, where I feel my job is important. I need to walk right into that screen.
Oh, no.
So the numbers, we were very happy with the movement of those numbers. So on the back side was kind of an outline of, so what if Pete and I then take these results and we go out and we do forums with employees. This year we did 4 employee forums and 1 supervisor forum. And this was kind of the outline that we used out of those forums. We kind of focused in, like, if you look at work environment, the lowest score was 62.94, which I encourage to work on my self-development. So at the forum, we did spend some time talking about what does that mean, what are your opportunities, what do you want. We talked a little bit about the mentorship program in there. People's interest in breaking down silos is what we heard. So we spent some time talking about that one. We talked a little bit about, again, even though our number is the lowest it's ever been, we still have 33% of our employees saying that I have considered leaving in the last year. That's still a high number. And so we talked about, when we looked at the survey results, what were the 2 areas that, why would you consider leaving? And I think the number 1 was, I want to find a place where I can work from home. And so they may have a job right now that does not allow them to work from home. It's a counter position, it's a CNA, it's a whatever, it's a truck driver. You can't do those jobs from home. You can't be a correction officer from home. You can't be a deputy from home. We have a lot of service-oriented positions, and there are people who are looking for jobs where maybe I can work from home. The other one was still money. People were still talking about money. Again, we talked about, we will never be the highest paid. We won't. And if that's your goal, I wish you luck, but we are at 50% of the market. And there's going to be some above us and there's going to be some below us, but we are pretty much 50% of the market rate. And we let them know that we'll be doing a compensation study again to make sure that we're still at 50% of the market. So it's just kind of a reality check, as if you really are seeking more money, it may not be here, it may be advancement.
I think that's everywhere.
Yeah.
I sent Pete an article that I just read out of the National Conference of State Legislatures, and all local units of government are struggling with the exact same issue of people looking for opportunities to work from home, right? And I think that that's everywhere because of COVID. It kind of worked into my schedule now, and that's what I want to continue to try and do. I don't know, in my estimation, I don't know if it's real as much as everybody's talking about it, so, you know. And the other is that all units of government are struggling and trying to keep up with a salary base and keeping people at that level. I just don't think that's unique to McHenry County, making that kind of observation. But I have another question. When people talk to you about many of these issues, you know, breaking down the silos, you know, better mentorship. I mean, I sat there and listened to that.
Yeah.
Tell me the flip side. What do the supervisors and the administrators of those divisions, do they feel that they're sharing the information appropriately? Is there a communication breakdown that you know the employee is not getting the information about benefits or about the wellness program or you know the opportunity of mentorship or going back to school, which is all the things that I heard too. Are we not doing that enough adequately, or is it just nobody asks the question so the information doesn't come out?
So there are many questions.
I know. I've been thinking about this for a long time and trying to.
So one of the things is, again, with benefits, again, Suzanne is here, and we're actually going to go out into every department and do benefits trainings Our new person just introduced us to Kahoot, and we did a test drive, and that's gonna be a blast. So we're getting ready to go out and do benefits throughout, but it's within the departments at their staff meetings or whatever. One of the things that we've kind of been, as I'm looking at employee development and looking at mentorship and breaking down silos, and looking at self-development, people, I think what we're looking at is how do we take the onus off the supervisor to develop employees and put it on the employee to ask and seek what they need. And
Generational.
yeah, so that's kind of the flip that I think we need to make. Because over the last 5 years, we've really been supervisors, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to understand this, you need to do this. And it's like, there's only so much some supervisors can do. And it's gotten to a point where it's like, we need to go back and say, employees, here's self-development. You know, what are your aspirations? What are your goals? And having them advocate for themselves. And
This fits with the program that Cheryl's working on with our managers to just talk with staff. Having what we're calling, stay interviewed. Just not, it's not a performance evaluation. It's just, hey, what can I do, to make your work experience better? What are you thinking about?
And getting them, and the supervisors understanding where they can hook the employees up to, but they are not the ones who have to do the development. So there's some pieces that we're kind of putting together. The mentorship program, again, we've looked at a couple of different models. It's not fully developed yet. There's the traditional mentorship program where it's one-on-one. There's pros and cons to that kind of program, but then there's also ones where there's a mentor who has maybe 20 mentees because they're mentoring on a certain topic. So we're looking at different models of mentorship right now. We're hoping, again, we tried to get some feedback from employees, and it's not done yet. But it's going to happen. It's going to happen this fall in some format.
Okay, so I would be really, I think you do a phenomenal job, Cheryl. I mean, I've been
thank
doing
you.
that, watching you forever. I would really be interested, ultimately, at the end of all of this, if people take advantage, even after all of the work that you're doing on this end, to communicate, to provide that information, to provide those programs.
Yeah.
I really want to know how many people are taking it.
Advantage.
And only because I want to know how much value I'm putting into
Yes.
comments that are written down on a piece of paper that just kind of go out, and to
Yeah.
people who really come to all of us and say, I need more, I want more. There's a different level of value there.
One of the things we heard and we suspected was sometimes there's still a little gap in terms of all the benefits, all the tools that we have and what people really know is available. I do a countywide email at the first Monday of the month. So moving forward, we're going to have something in there every time about benefits. And did you know this? Did you know that? This tool's available. We're going to start that next Monday. We're going to talk about our EAP program. I think it's pretty powerful, pretty wonderful. There's an app, but we've got a lot of people that aren't very familiar with it.
So I have a question, talking about benefits. Is there, where I worked before, we could go on our computer and we could look at total employee compensation. So it has your salary, plus it has what or like your insurance and all of those, and it puts it in, it gives you, so when someone is talking about, I'm leaving here because I'm not making enough money, that's only part of the salary. So is there a tool where they can look?
It's on Kronos.
Is it on Kronos?
You can pull that off of Kronos, and we probably need to put that email
September.
out again to
Yeah.
say it's time, because we
And
used
just
to
let people
have
see
to-
that, because it really makes a big difference
Yeah.
when they're trying to decide, am I going to stay here or am I going to go to ABC company where they may have lousy insurance, and so the compensation, the bottom line,
Correct.
could end up being much
Correct.
better
Yeah.
at the county.
Yeah. we used to manually put together a total compensation report, and it's now on Kronos, so we don't have to manually do it. Employees can go in there anytime and look at their total compensation. But it's probably time that we need to remind them, go back in and look at that. We're
That's
not
right.
printing it, we're not gonna send it to you, but go in and look at it, it's there.
Okay.
We looked at, again, the whole issue of bullying came up in employee surveys, and we have been bringing down the level of bullying, perceived bullying, whether it's, you know, what level it's at, we didn't really measure, but that number is, again, the lowest it has ever been, which is great. The one thing we talked about with employees was, again, we still have almost 9% people who say that they're aware of it and they've not reported it. So why aren't you reporting it? So we spent some time talking about what's the deal? If it's happening, it shouldn't be, why aren't you talking about it? And so it was fear of retribution. And,
Yeah, fear of retaliation.
yeah, and it's like, so, yeah. So we spent some time talking about that one. Again, there were notes that I sent out that you all got in your emails also, but that was a very interesting conversation. And again, talked about organizational values and organizational communication. Again, if we were to add communication as a fourth organizational goal, what would that look like? What are we talking about? Are we talking about departmental, internal, external? It's really too general, so we're still trying to say, if we were to add it as a goal, what would it be? So we spent some time talking about organizational communications. We also spent some time talking with them about potential, legislation that's coming down the line, and we'll let them know when it actually gets approved. But we talked with them about, we're aware that there's some legislation out there that could impact them. So the forums, I think there was like about 125 people total who came to the forums. So I don't know if there's any other questions you have about those, but it's yes.
I just have two questions.
Yes.
They kind of follow up on each other. So we had 518 employees participate for this year,
Yes.
which is a big increase
Yes.
from the last year.
Yes.
So going back to I've considered leaving the county in the last year, the retention.
Yes.
Also a sizable drop,
Yes.
right? From roughly 47% to roughly 33%. Have you seen anything? Is that carried over to retention? Has retention improved? Or are maybe some of these numbers just because more people are participating, where maybe prior there were just the individuals who may have had, I guess, an axe to grind or an issue?
I think any elementary stats class could challenge, some elements of this. I mean, it is, the respondents maybe are a little bit more satisfied the more and more people you get to participate.
Yeah.
But we also, let's remember, last July, we did a compensation adjustment that touched nearly half of our employees. The labor market is a little tighter than it was last summer.
Just to follow up to what Eric said, and I know like the last 3 years won't be a good indicator because of COVID, but really the one way you can know and measure that is looking at the turnover rate. So if we look at the turnover rate from, say, years prior to COVID, like 2015 through 2020 perhaps, that would be good information for us to have, because that rate is going to be pretty, it really lets you know how you're doing.
Yeah. I can bring that to the next meeting.
That'd be great.
Thank you.
Yeah. Two other things. One of them, this kind of falls in line with what we're just talking about. I gave you this report probably 4 or 5 months ago, but I wanted to give you an update. The numbers, we were at about 81 vacancies. We're now down to 74. So the positions are getting filled. Things are getting better. There are some positions on here that, as we talk to departments, they're probably going to propose that they be eliminated in their budgets this year. So I did note those in the report also. Thank you. much detail. I've given this to you before. Again, Valley High is, you see the Sheriff's Department and the Health Department. Well, the Sheriff's Department actually is almost filled. There were a bunch of conditional offers that were just made, so that was really good. Health Department, again, the admin specialists, they're always recruiting. Valley High is always recruiting for CNAs and nursing staff, as is everyone else.
Yeah,
Pardon?
that job
As is everyone else everywhere.
Yeah, and that job is never done. It's,
Yeah.
it's the job. It's continuous.
There's a couple positions that people have budgeted, but they don't, like the activity assistant at Valley High, until their a resident level goes up, the activity assistant they're holding. So there's a couple of positions like that that people are saying, don't take it away, please, because I think I'm gonna need it. There's another one, again, there's an animal control officer position, but they just hired 4 new ones, and they don't want to bring in another one right away while they've got 4 that are in the middle of training. There's a courtroom specialist, again, there's 3 in training, so we can't really afford to bring on another one right now, but we will bring them in. So that's just an update on the vacancy report. Again, it is shorter than it was the last time we were here. Some of those vacancies are filled, so yay. And then, any questions on that one? And the final one, again, I showed you this one last year, so I'm going to show it to you again this year. This is related to our health insurance. Again, I really like this one. So we joined the health insurance pool in 2017, going into 18. And again, as we talked earlier, being in a pool, like Scott said, being in a pool can have some real financial advantages. And this absolutely, this absolutely did have its advantages. So I looked at, again, we became, I think, self-funded in 2002. If I could go back to the records. So I looked at who our broker was. So the yellow one was the first broker, the green was the second broker, the fourth was the third broker, and then we joined the pool. So the orange is the pool. If you look at the HMO, again, for HMO, PPO, and high deductible PPO, there's employee, employee plus 1, and family. So if you look at HMO employee, there's 3 in the white at the bottom, 2002 to 2024. So that's our history of being self-funded. The average change per year was 12.24%. That's pretty high. Prior to IPBC, the average was 12.57. Since we've been in IPBC, it's been 4.2. Wow. So you can see the pool impact. The pool has really been good to us. Same thing with the employee plus 1. It was 12.24 for our whole history, 12.57 prior to IPBC, and 4.2. So that's all the same. We, again, our PPOs, so when we went into the pool, we had always kept our HMO and PPO, they moved together. When we went into the pool, they're like, nope, HMO, your HMO is gonna ride with our HMOs, and your PPO is gonna ride with our PPO. So we saw that our PPO rates actually went almost to 0 for years, because our PPO was kind of inflated because we had connected it to our HMO. So you'll see that our PPO rates since we joined the pool are less than 1%.
Wow, yeah.
Which is really good.
And we incented people to move to PPO.
Yes, and the HSA, again, less than 1%. So our PPOs have been very good. Dental, actually, there was a decrease. So employees are now paying less than they did when we were back self-funded. So that's zeros. We added an extra dental program also. So I really like this sheet, and it really helps reassure me that being in the pool is where we need to be. So I'm sitting on the executive board. I've been on that board now 3, maybe 4 years. And it's headed in the right direction, so I'm very happy with the results of that, or being in the pool. Our costs are still going up, you know, because this year our HMO went up, I think 8.2%. PPOs went up 2 point something. I don't have the number right at my fingertips. So our numbers did go up this year. Any questions on health insurance? Yes.
Just one. Is there a downside to being part of the pool? Or
A downside to being part of the pool. Well, if they decide to, if they, as a group, which is now like 170 municipalities in the state of Illinois, if they should vote to move from Blue Cross Blue Shield, and we don't wanna, we gotta move with the vote.
okay.
So I think that would be a
So
downside.
less autonomy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. That's not gonna happen.
We are among the largest members.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think we're number 2. Lake County just joined in the last year, and they're now the largest. We're number 2.
Does everyone get one vote?
Yes. Everybody still gets one vote. There are several pools, smaller sub-pools, you know, of people with like 12 employees or 25, so there's some smaller.
There's a lot of like Sugar Road.
Yeah, there's some smaller pools. McHenry County for Conservation District, I believe, is one of the members. Lake County, Crystal Lake, McHenry. So there's a lot of local municipalities that are also part of the pool. Yeah. So, yes.
And more municipalities that have joined, we're gonna make the pool stronger, right? With better negotiability.
Yeah.
Is there outreach to our municipalities to join our pool?
So that's a really good question, because one of my concerns was at one point, we were just growing so fast as a pool that I felt like we were just taking in everybody, and we weren't prepared for the growth. There have been some changes with the pool where it used to be very strongly managed, guided, directed by Gallagher, which was, and it almost became the Gallagher pool instead of Gallagher being the broker for the pool.
Right.
And so there's been some swapping where IPBC now has some staff people where it did not have them before, and some of the functions that Gallagher was performing, the pool is now performing at a much lesser cost than Gallagher was charging us to do. So I think there was some, I think there were 143 when we joined, and it's now like 170 something. So huge growth.
Just because I know of a situation, are we subject, in the event that there is a massive issue in one of those membership pools, are we subject to being part of that because we're part of the pool?
Yes.
So if there's a lawsuit, if there is some kind of an unusual situation, are we subject to the?
There's stop loss. There is a stop loss plan over it, but there's 4 different levels. We're in tier number 4 because we're big.
Yeah.
So basically, we share liabilities with tier level 4 people primarily.
Okay. That would be the only downside I would see, Eric, is that, you know, you're subject potentially until you hit that stop loss level of absorbing somebody else's.
And if you want,
Medical.
want more information on the pool and its funding and that kind of stuff, I can have somebody come in from IPBC.
But it goes the other way, Pam, if all of a sudden we had 4 premature babies. You know,
Right.
Right.
Sharing that burden.
I agree. I was just thinking about that. In answer to Eric's question, that's the only downside I could see too. But you're right. We share our losses with them too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We have more people, so we're going to have more losses.
Significant. That's all I have to share for today, and I will bring back a turnover report next month.
Okay. Thank you, Cheryl. That
Thank
was
you.
a great
Thank you.
report.
Communications.
At least she was in Italy.
Oh, okay. She's not communicating.
Buying the
And she's not joining us remotely? Wow.
She'll be back next
That's
week.
5 or 6 hours later. She's still up.
She and her mother are exploring Italy. I want to introduce Jeremy Andrzejkowski. Jeremy's our new assistant finance director, started a couple weeks ago.
Hi, Jeremy. Welcome.
I was wondering.
Providing relief, much needed relief to Carrie.
Public comment.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. Where do you come from? What's your background? Where'd you go?
Background, public libraries. So I formerly worked as finance director for Oak Park Public Library.
Nice.
And then previously Arlington Heights for many, many years. To deputy director there. And so mostly public service early in my career, and then focused on finance for the past few years.
Nice. Well, welcome.
So excited to be here.
Both
Welcome
two
aboard.
great libraries.
So
Yes.
Jeremy's now joining Carrie and I of all of our budget meetings, and they're going well. Had a good one yesterday afternoon with the health department, and we'll be meeting this afternoon with DOT, get some big ones done. Sheriff is next week. But I think all in all they're going pretty well. I think people are being pretty reserved in their new requests. We starting to prepare a list of supplementals to share with finance tomorrow, and it's not that significant. So that's good. We haven't met with IT. The heads up is that IT is asking for a lot this year, but that's what they always do, and they just need to get us on. They need to get on the
Hey, he's
radar.
behind you.
If I could just remind the committee too, as I mentioned in the budget presentation, cyber liability is one of our biggest threats. So they've done a lot of job. The county board has been very supportive in helping to shore up our IT, and keep that in mind. That's money well spent.
A week from tomorrow, Carrie and I are going to provide some update at the committee of the whole meeting as to where we are in the budget process and some of the challenges we're anticipating, and some of the good news. I mean, so there is some good news. Carrie and Jeremy and I met with Chairman Bueller and Finance Chair Scala on Monday, doing some initial estimates on revenues for fiscal '24, and revenues like income tax, you can guess they're up. People are making more money, and we're seeing that reflected there. Cannabis, wow. say what you want, but the dollars are coming in, and we're anticipating more there. As you set out in the budget policy, we're going to kind of work down the path of providing 3 scenarios relative to the property tax levy: no increase, 2.5% increase, or 5% increase. So we're going to kind of show that to Finance Committee tomorrow, coupled with all of our other major revenues, and just use that as a backdrop as we move into September. Got more budget meetings to tackle, and we're still moving towards that big budget cow meeting at the end of September, but I think we're in pretty good shape. Carrie, am I forgetting anything? No? You're doing a good job. What else do I want to say? Shaylin left the room, but Shaylin and I are meeting with Adam Wallen after this meeting to talk about building inspection. And there is an appetite amongst a number of our municipalities to share building inspectors in some manner. Marengo and Woodstock are already sharing inspection services, and we're looking at some opportunities. There's some of our smaller municipalities are really looking at areas to share building inspection services there. So we're going to meet with Shaylin on that. Shaylin and Adam Latundra and I are going to be meeting next week with ComEd. And you heard Tom Burrows talking about the electrification programs and building a map for our infrastructure for electrification whenever that comes. But ComEd has a very, very significant program that they're rolling out next week to municipalities. They invited us downtown for a half-day meeting on Wednesday, but I've kind of negotiated, we're going to get our own private presentation of that virtually. So we're working on that and getting our stuff together there. Next week, on Tuesday afternoon, we are going to have a meeting of all of our court services and a number of the police chiefs to talk about pretrial fairness again. This is the second such meeting. We know that we are preparing for the cashless bail situation on September 18th and all the steps that need to take place there. I feel pretty good. We had the dry run getting ready for January 1st, so we'll put a lot of these things in place already in terms of what would be, but now, as we're getting closer to reality, we're going to be meeting with the police chiefs and such on that. Last thing I want to mention is VAC. Carrie and Jeremy and I are going to meet with Mike Iwaniki to review the VAC's budget next Tuesday, I believe. But you remember last year, one of the gifts that the state's attorney, or the General Assembly gave us was really less control of the VAC's levy. In fact, no control. But our VAC has been terrific, and they've been very modest in terms of what they're asking for, and I know that's not the case in every county. So let me start and finish by saying thank you, McHenry County and VAC. They've been very modest. But they are adding another position, and they don't need to ask you, and they're not asking you. So Cheryl and I worked with Mike in kind of a new process. He's given us, it's just an admin spec 1. It's an entry-level administration, clerical position. But Mike is adding that, and he's recruiting for it now. My commitment to you is when staff is added there, I'm going to tell the board. That's what I told Mike, so I'm telling you. We haven't seen the budget request yet, but I'm not anticipating it to be overly significant. They're being pretty reserved in what they're doing, so I appreciate that.
And will we talk about that a little bit during, do they have needs I know they're being very good because they're very conscientious under Mike, but do they have needs that we need to be aware of? Are there any financial
I don't think so, and I say that because the way we've always worked with the VAC is you tell us what you need on the expense side, we'll match it. We'll get you what you need, and they've always generally returned money. And unless their situation really changes and they really start doing a different kind of outreach, I don't think we're going to see a real gap between what they're asking for and what we can deliver.
Okay.
We'll talk about that a little bit next Thursday.
I just want to be, I just would like to be aware of anything that.
It would take a real elevation in their service delivery program that I'm not seeing yet, unless we get surprised.
And there's no complaints that we're not doing it adequately enough?
No.
Okay.
So that's it.
Okay. Any other questions? And that included your administrator's report.
That was it.
Okay. Well, I thought you were covering communications at the
No,
beginning, but I think we slid into the
It
other.
was a seamless segue.
Are you seeking a motion to adjourn?
I am seeking a motion.
I think
to
I
adjourn.
just said that.
Okay, and a second by Matt. All those in favor say aye.